How are you doing?
Good.
What up?
Thanks for joining. This is the maiden voyage of this little mini series. We still got like a couple more minutes, but so I'm gonna wait until I'll start like right at 4. Um, but cool. Yeah, I'm excited.
What is kind of your goal for the series?
So that's actually something I'm going to address first. I'm glad you asked that question.
Cool.
So sit tight for like 1 minute,
Sounds
and
good.
we'll get there. Sweet, got another person. All right, can everybody hear me? We've got 6, well, including me, there's 6 people in the room. Looks like we got Maya, Jacob, John, and Tyler, and Matt, of course. So yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Awesome. So welcome, first of all. I'm used to teaching in person, so this is kind of a new, little bit new experience for me. Teaching multiple people on Zoom, but good old COVID. So what I'm hoping, my goal for this whole series is really just to provide some insight and context to what it's like to not only be a software engineer professionally, but also what it's like transitioning to that. So one of my passions is teaching. I love teaching programming, and I taught at a boot camp called B School for 2 years. Currently, I work as a software engineer at Fidelity Investments here in Salt Lake City. And my my passion is really helping people who are not sure if they want to make the plunge into programming. My goal is to help those who may not know what it's like or know if it's for them. I like to help them along the way in their path to switching to the tech industry. It's kind of my way of giving back because I didn't really have someone to give me any sort of direction or context. I was working as a welder with a philosophy degree, so go figure. And I just serendipitously met a person who I was driving for Uber, and I met someone who happened to go to V school, and they told me about it and it sounded cool. The idea of a coding boot camp, I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what to expect or what it was like. So I did some research. It seemed pretty cool. So I did it. And I'm glad I did. But I also wish that I had had a little bit more context prior to that experience. Like I said, I didn't have a software engineer friend or anyone, surprisingly, who kind of could help me along and be like, all right, you got to check this out, learn this, make sure, you don't need to learn this, you do need to learn this, or this is how you do it, or whatever. I didn't have anyone to filter out all these resources. So I'm hoping to be that person for potentially you guys. And maybe, so since there's such a small crowd, maybe if someone wants to volunteer and just kind of explain why you chose to be here right now today, because there's a lot of things you could be doing right now on Labor Day. So I'm curious to know what some of you guys are hoping to get out of this today. And there's also this is weekly, so you're welcome to come every week.
Cool. I can start real fast. My name's John
ahead.
Bowser. I just moved out to Salt Lake City right when everything locked down. And I came out here thinking I was going to transfer. I did construction for about a year before I moved out here, and I was hoping to kind of jump into that and get going, but things are just weird with COVID. Ended up taking just a part-time stocking job at Walmart, and it was just awful. So I was starting to try and figure out what else I could be doing. It seemed like an opportunity to maybe learn something new. And I came across Free Code Camp, started messing around with that, did their HTML and CSS thing and curriculum, and was enjoying it. So I just decided to look into it a little bit more and realized that it's possible to get into the tech industry and programming without a college degree, which I thought was something that seemed unlikely, but turned out it was the case. So I actually am currently in a boot camp, about halfway through it. So I joined this because I'm working on my first capstone project and getting a little burnt out, and I saw a little post about this in the Utah JS Slack. So figured it'd be a good opportunity to maybe meet some new people, hear some interesting stuff from somebody who's been through this process, and give me a break from banging my head against the wall on my project. So
right on. I hear you. I know exactly what that feels like. I've been there. One day I spent all night. It was like the night before one of our capstone projects were due, and I remember spending literally the whole night just drinking an entire 4-pack of Red Bull and just trying to get this thing out the door, and got it done at around 8:45 a.m. Showed up at 9, presented it, and then passed out on the couch. It was one of those days.
I'm trying to avoid that scenario, but I tend to do better work under pressure. So I kind of.
Yeah, I do too. It's good or bad.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Does anyone else want to volunteer? Jacob, did you sound like you were interested in giving us some information about why you're here?
Yeah, sorry, my baby's crying. That's why I wasn't going to speak up. But I'm kind of in the same boat, doing a boot camp. Saw this online, and I'm almost done with mine, so I'm looking for what, you know, could be out there, what the workplace is like, and stuff like that. I really want a developer job. Going through all of this, I've just like doing the work and going through the boot camp. It is like exciting to me. And so just wondering if that was, you know, useful to me, like the boot camp was going to be useful to me in the end, you know, if that's going to get me somewhere and stuff like that. So.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Who currently is not in a boot camp? That is, I want to just kind of gauge who's already in one and is kind of working through stuff or is almost done, or is not in one and is thinking about doing it. Is there anyone that is not in one and thinking about doing one?
Hi. Hello?
Hey, how's it going, Irving?
Hi, not bad. Yeah, my name is Irving. I'm from Montreal, Canada. I'm thinking about taking a boot camp in January.
Okay.
So right now I'm just taking a course through Scrimba, the boot camp primer.
Oh,
and I
nice.
think maybe taking the actual career front-end developer career path
Mm-hmm.
before taking a boot camp. So like, I'm not sure if the boot camp will be that extra help unless, or maybe like I don't know if it's like I should take it just for like the accreditation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. So like I'm on the fence with that.
Okay.
But yeah.
So, unfortunately, there's not boot camps for some reason. It depends on the company, but lots of different companies tend to not really recognize boot camp certifications as like an actual legitimate thing. They just kind of basically your GitHub and your interview is 90% of what they look at. Your credentials honestly don't mean a whole lot. If you have a bachelor's degree in computer science, that does tend to help put you in the small stack. But again, it totally depends on the company. Like I don't have a degree in computer science. I have a degree in philosophy. So that doesn't really help me, at least in any like official capacity. It doesn't give me any extra, doesn't really give me an extra edge at all. The reason why I got hired is because I passed an interview and was able to explain my projects,
Okay.
basically. So when you have so really what a boot camp can do is help, because it's so immersive, because it's usually full time and it's like that's the only thing you focus on. The boot camp helps give you a structure to your learning in a intensive way. I can tell you that with the way that my mind works, if I'm not like fully in something, I have a hard time retaining it and keeping interest. Luckily, I kind of already love coding. I played around in free code camp and CoderBite and stuff like that. But doing the boot camp helped just like, it was awesome because it was like a whole community of other people that were all focusing on the same goal, which like really hardened my knowledge and helped motivate me and discipline me on those days when like I really just didn't want to get up because it was hard. It was a challenge, not gonna lie. So I guess, so for you, Irving, what I would recommend is thinking about, you know, what kind of environment do you learn best in? And how much time do you have to dedicate to like something? Some people can just learn on their own, and that's awesome. I'm not one of those people. I can learn, like if I have a problem I need to solve, I can look up how to do it, but like I'm not the kind of person that could just go do a free online bachelor or computer science degree online in my spare time. I'm just, my brain's too scattered to do that. So that's, I guess, what I would consider. Does that help?
For sure. And would you say like I think I'm in the same situation. I enjoy learning in a structured environment, and
Mhm.
the course I was thinking about, the boot camp, was going to be online only because the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if I'd still get the same benefit of the interaction, the networking, and sort of the extracurricular stuff, like getting that interaction with teachers and stuff.
Yeah.
Was that a big thing in your experience?
In my experience, yeah, I'm actually really glad that COVID didn't hit while I was in a boot camp. To be honest, everybody has their own, I think, personal reaction to all this. And I definitely think that there's a lot lost in the non-personal interaction. There's something just really organic about being like, ah, crap, I have this error. Hey, man, do you want to just come look at this really quick? And then afterwards, you go get drinks, you know, or you drink while you're debugging because it's 11 p.m. and you're stuck on this damn problem. So I definitely think it requires a little bit more discipline in this kind of environment, and there is something lost, but the information's the same. You know, and there are ways. The thing is with developers and programmers is that naturally we're adaptable. Good programmers can adapt and can learn on the fly. So this is a good test for that, because you got to be flexible. If you don't have a flexible mindset, then it's difficult. So this is kind of a good. It kind of filters out the people that are not flexible in their approach. So there's kind of a positive spin to that as well, I would say. And there's actually some advantages I've found to doing this kind of stuff online. So right now I'm stuck working from home. Our company had us do that starting in March, and it's not going to end anytime soon. And I've actually found that debugging and troubleshooting is actually a lot easier with people. You don't have someone like hanging over your shoulder. It's kind of awkward that way. What you like sharing your screen and having two people just look at it is actually a lot more efficient than having two people sitting at the same computer. And also, I think there's another advantage with lectures not being so rigid. If you like fall behind in a lecture, especially on a programming lecture about algorithms or databases or whatever, it can be really hard to catch. It can be really hard to gain ground even if you miss like one part of a lecture, it can be hard to catch up. So having these responsive formats where you go through at the pace that you're comfortable with, and then going to mentors for questions after you've spent time working at it yourself, that is actually a huge advantage that you don't necessarily not get in a boot camp, but the lecture format, I think sometimes you can lose people in the crowd, and this format, I think, can actually benefit. Or it's one advantage, I would say. So there's definitely pros and cons. Is there anybody else that is not in a boot camp? I see a chat here. Okay, cool. Tyler, so you said that you're probably going to do the web development course on the 15th. That's awesome. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but would you like to expand on that? You don't have to if you don't want to. I think you're muted if you're speaking. How about Maya? Would you like to volunteer your experience?
In V-School's bootcamp. I started
Awesome.
in June.
Okay, nice.
I came on this call actually to see kind of like the big picture in terms of what companies are going to really be looking for that kind of thing, so I can kind of refocus how I get through the program. So in other words, don't like stress over things that might not be as important.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. All right. This is really great information for me. So I already have I've got a preset plan for the next little bit. And then I'm going to open it up to some question and answer for the rest of the time. Because I want this to be I want to be as helpful as I can. So if there's something that I'm going over that is really not relevant, feel free to let me know. But my goal here is to just kind of talk about some of the things that I've found to be pretty important on the job that I wish I had known about before, joining the tech industry. So the first thing, I'm going to share my screen. I've got can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a site that I wish I had known about. I did not know about this. It's called the Front End Handbook from Front End Masters. Every year they come out with one. As far as I know, the 2021 hasn't been created yet. They honestly don't change that much per year. Or at least 2019 isn't that different from 2018 and 2017. There's a few things, but this site is awesome. It gives you such a great bird's eye view of what it means to be a web developer. Now I know it says front end developer, but it's kind of a vague term because you still have to know how the internet works. You still need to have a pretty good understanding of how servers and databases work. But this is obviously in the context of web development. So whether it's, JavaScript web development is what this site is very much geared towards. So I would highly recommend, even if you're finishing up a boot camp, to use this as kind of your Bible, if you will. There's so much great information on here. These chapter 3 especially, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to know how the internet works. Most of you, I'm sure, know the basics, but there's a lot of good stuff in here that even I didn't know about. And there's a lot of great resources here. This is, instead of going down YouTube rabbit holes, go down the Front End Masters rabbit hole and you will learn a ton. There's videos, there's articles, everything. This internet web one is really important. The web browsers one is really important. This one's really important, the DOM. A lot of these are, some of them aren't really that important. Command line is really great to know. I like to write my own scripts to automate as much as I can. Yeah, there's just it's a ridiculous amount of information. I know it's kind of overwhelming, but it's kind of fun to just pick a topic for the day or the week and just read up on it. This gives you a great bird's eye view. So I would start by bookmarking this, as I have. I use this fairly regularly. Secondly, and actually, before I go on to the next thing, does anybody have any questions? All right. So now, obviously, knowing how the internet works, knowing how browsers work are pretty important because you're a web developer. Your entire workspace is based on the internet. You're writing code for the internet, and the Devtools is another. I'm going to devote an entire session in a few weeks I don't remember if it's next week or if it's the week after, but I'm going to be dedicating the entire session to just the Chrome Devtools, because I had no idea how underrated debugging using the Devtools is. I wish that I had known more about it prior to even doing boot camp. I think they had told me going into it that they recommend looking it up, but I didn't really understand what it could actually do. Like the fact that I can go in here and I can look at elements here. I can select them. I can get an idea of what they are, where they are, what they look like, the stylings that are getting applied to every element on the page. That's amazing. The console, the fact that I can actually write JavaScript in the console, even while you're debugging, to see values and see functions running, stuff like that. Amazing. I wish I'd known about that, or I wish I'd known what you could do with it. Sources gives you an idea of all of the files that are being served up from this site. I had never really understood what sources were, but now I use them to put in breakpoints, right? I mean, this is obviously minimized code. There's not much to do here, but you can use this to actually put in breakpoints, which is amazing. Also really great for debugging. Use this literally every day at work. The network tab, this is where you can see the data that's getting sent and received on a site. You can look at the JavaScript files that are being given to you. You can look at the CSS files. You can look at images and media, audio and videos if there are any, the fonts, stuff like that. XHR, I probably use this the most because this is the mechanism by which most websites receive and send data that gets stored in databases and whatnot. So this tab is really good, and you can see all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to go into the details here, but it's just nice to know that this exists and how important it is. 99% of the time when I'm in the Devtools, I'm either here in the debugger or I'm in the network tab looking at web traffic. And then there's obviously other stuff like session storage, which I will go into at a later time. But I just feel like reading up on the documentation for the Devtools and really learning how it works is really critical. It saves so much time, and I wish that I had spent more time learning it prior to the boot camp. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about that? Great. All right, so I think I would argue probably one of the most important non-coding related thing that I wish I had, in hindsight, taken a bit more time to look into is version control, and more specifically Git, and kind of the proper way to manage a project using Git. In vSchool, we created a repository for our code, and then we were just we kind of just used it as we didn't really use it as a version control. It was honestly used more of like a backup, which is certainly a valuable use case for Git, but Git is so much more powerful than just storing a code. It's a version control system. So what I had wished I had done is coming up with a better Git flow in terms of updating projects, versioning them, and documenting my changes better. How many of you just kind of blindly do git add -a and then git commit -m, did some shit, and then git push?
Yeah, sometimes.
Right? Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that as well.
I am
However,
actually,
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
for my RPG project, I wanted
Mhm.
to upload the current version because I refactor my code a lot. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out the older version is still stored there, and then I can
Mhm.
upload the new one. I think it's called a commit, but I have to watch the videos.
Yeah, so let me actually do a quick little. I'm gonna have an entire episode devoted to version control as well. But so here's a project I'm working on currently for my friend. I just built him a little website, and what we do at work, it's very simple. We have a team of about 15 people. So you can imagine how if you don't have a good system in place for managing conflicts and things like that, you can imagine how that would get pretty messy. 15 people all at the same time on the same code base. That sounds like a disaster. And we avoid that by just doing some very simple things. First of all, we have a master branch, let me restart. We have several categories of branches. You have the master branch, which is just the current most stable version of the code. No one ever commits to master, ever. I don't even think anyone has permission to do that, except for the administrator. We have a develop branch, which represents the latest stable development branch, meaning every sprint, every month, we have a new release. And so our develop branch is just branched off of the master branch. And that is the code base that we are adding to every day, or merging to every day. I should say making pull requests to every day. And then we have release branches. So after we've tested and merged all of the code from everybody and it's all good, then we create a release branch. And then that release branch is that code, that snapshot is what we use to deploy to the various customers that we have. So those are the main branches. We've got release branches, the develop branch, and then the master branch. And individually, what we all do, we're obviously just given JIRA tickets that define some feature or bug fix that needs to be added. And what we do is we then pull down the develop branch, and when we're ready to start working on a feature or bug fix, we branch off of the develop. And we just have there's a specific pattern that we follow. It has to follow this format where it says feature or bug fix. It's either one of the two, feature or bug fix / and then whatever the name of the ticket is. And it usually has a number in there, like an identifying number. This is my own personal project, so I don't have a JIRA ticket. I'm managing it myself. I don't really need JIRA for that. But you know, on a project that has 1,000 files and I don't know, 1 million lines of code, it's helpful.
Ben, are you sharing something besides the Google screen? Because we're still seeing that.
You're seeing what? I'm
Google.
sorry. Crap. That was my bad. I did not realize I was still. Here we go. This is where I meant. This is what I was trying to show. Can you see this? The VS Code? Sweet. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. What I was pointing to is this guy in the bottom left, where we have a branch called. Our branches are always called feature or bug fix / and then whatever the particular feature is called. And then yeah, we just submit pull requests, and we just have rules that say only we have to have at least three reviews passing, and then we have an automatic Jenkins process which then runs all the tests. And if the tests all are good and the developers like the code and the QA testers think everything looks good, then boom, it gets merged in. So in a later, like I said, in a later episode, I'm going to go over some of the specifics of how you can implement just a nice, clean Git version workflow in your own projects. It's not hard at all. It's just knowledge that I didn't know at the time. So branching and committing are really the branching, committing, and deploying are kind of the things I'd wish I'd known a little bit more about. And we'll go in depth on that in a couple weeks. So I hope you guys join for that, because I think will be a really fun and useful thing. So to recap, version control is really great for managing a project and all the changes that you have going at a time. So you can use that very effectively for those things. Okay, does anyone have any question about version control in Git? All right. Oh crap, I left my. Okay, so I've got just a couple more things. So something that's really important, that's it's sort of code related, but not really, is being able to navigate the terminal. If you have Windows, you might have PowerShell or the command prompt, or if you're using Mac, the terminal. Having a basic understanding and being comfortable using the terminal is really, really valuable. Sorry, 1 sec. I think I have a. Did someone just send me a chat? No. All right. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So the terminal is really, really important. So, and what I mean by that is being able to write scripts which will automate certain things for you. For example, in a package.json file, you can normally, you guys are probably used to seeing stuff like, I don't know, what is it, npm start, and it does like the React script start, or like you'll have like a deploy script or whatever. Being able to write scripts is really, really awesome. For example, so I'm on a Windows. Here's a really basic script that I've got going here. Another simple one. All these are really simple. They can get much more complicated. But just having the understanding of being able to write and run scripts to automate your process, so you're not sitting there typing in the terminal all the time, can be really helpful. And also just having a basic understanding of how the terminal works. Like, for example, navigating your directories, copying files, or editing files in the terminal, or even sending out HTTP requests from the terminal. I usually have to look that up every time because I don't do it very often. But again, being comfortable with the terminal can be really, really useful. And I wish that I had been a little bit more comfortable with it prior to my boot camp, because during the boot camp it's kind of overwhelming. All of a sudden you feel like you're trying to plug into the matrix while they're just showing you how to create a file in the terminal. So being comfortable with the terminal, I think, is really great. Any questions on that?
Do you have like a good source you would recommend? I don't know if maybe that front end masters page has this, but where you went to kind of learn more about the terminal, or?
So a lot of what I have done has been, I don't actually remember if there's anything on here. Let me check. A lot of what I did, honestly, was just trial and error. I'd be like, man, I'm really sick of writing this over and over and over again.
Shelter.
Yes.
And oh, I think someone, I can hear some background. Is there someone? Oh, it's Michael. Sorry, Michael, I muted you. Yeah, a lot of what I learned as far as writing scripts and writing automations and stuff is just kind of on a case by case thing. I'd be like, man, I'm really sick of writing this over and over again. There's got to be an easier way to do this. And I would then solve the problem for that specific issue. And then in the future, something else would come along and I could take that knowledge from before and be like, oh yeah, I can just apply that to this situation. And it kind of just stemmed from really just experimenting. But there are some great documentations. So the Bash manual is a little bit overwhelming because it's documentation for the terminal, but this is really helpful. And I'm gonna put all these links out in the chat at the end. So this gives you a pretty good overview. And again, this is for Bash. This is for the Mac terminal. PowerShell, the Windows documentation is great for that, which I do reference quite a bit. But yeah, it really just depends on your specific use case. For me, it's usually just running scripts that either run a test or copying files from one place to another, or running a development server, stuff like that. I've just learned how to write scripts. Yeah, but great question. Does anybody else have any questions about that? Cool. Alrighty, I've got one last. Okay, and so the last thing that I'm gonna go over before I open it up to just questions or anything, because we've still got about like 20 minutes, so we got plenty of time. So I wish that I had spent more time doing just little coding puzzles prior to the boot camp, getting just a feel for writing the actual code. Because part of the hard part about a boot camp is it's just a flood of information and you're learning a whole new language. You know, it's kind of like, you know, trying to learn Russian in 3 months. Oh, hey, Michael, sorry, there's a lot of background noise coming from you. So I am muting you. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I totally just spaced what I was saying.
Something about like learning Russian.
Oh, thank you. All right. Yes. Wow. Brain just literally stopped functioning there. Yes. Okay. So I wish that I'd done more coding puzzles, because the more that you sit down and you want to have some level of familiarity with just looking at code and writing it before a boot camp. I really enjoyed it. So this is actually one thing that I think I did do quite a bit. I wish I had done more though, was I just went to CoderByte. There's a ton. All you have to do is Google coding puzzle website, and there's like 10, and they're all good. CoderByte's really good. Free Code Camp, I think, has puzzles. I don't remember.
Sorry to interrupt you again, but you're still on your VS Code screen.
Oh crap, that's I'm actually not showing anything here, but thanks for letting me know.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
It is loading in, I think. There it is.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, I mean, there's CoderByte, there's called, at one point, I think it was called Code Wars, but I think they changed their name to like Code, no, that's not it. Code Battle, no, what was it called? This looks, they must have, a different company must have bought this domain, because that does not look right. Yeah, CoderByte, Lead Code is good. There's Code Chef. There's a lot, but seriously, if you just look up online programming exercises. Yeah, Project Euler, I forgot about that one. That one's good. It's more for math stuff, but it's still good. So honestly, find one that you like and just try to do them. Because this is probably the most important skill, is just having that fluency with the language. Because if you're in the lecture and the teacher is kind of, the teacher is going to go at a pace of someone who is fluent in the language. Obviously, they're teaching you it, so they're going to go slow, but the more fluency you have in just the basic syntax, then the easier time you're going to have comprehending the actual substance of the problem that's being solved. Because you don't want to be sitting there tripped up on things like, oh crap, does a comma go here, or is it a semicolon? Is it a colon, or is it a comma? Is it a double quote or a single quote? Is it a parenthesis, or is it a curly brace? If you're gonna what's the phrase? You don't want to lose the forest for the trees. So the more prepared you can, the more you can prepare yourself ahead of time, the better. And this is something that you should do pretty much every day. If you're already in the boot camp, you're pretty much doing this, but you really give yourself a head start by doing these kinds of exercises. And they start out really easy, stuff like print out print out only the odd numbers in an array of numbers, or print out all the vowels in a string, stuff like that. It really trains you on the mechanics and syntax of the language. So I cannot recommend highly enough how important it is to do these kinds of things on a daily basis. I mean, it's just like English. You use English every day. So yeah, any questions on that front? Cool. All right. So with that, I kind of want to just open this up to you guys. Like, I want to be as helpful as I can. So what kinds of questions do you guys have for me?
Okay, I got one. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, Nick?
Hey, so company I'm working at, we're architecturing a new project we're putting together.
Yeah.
Biggest problem we're running into is figuring out kind of how to organize CSS within a React project.
Uh-huh.
Has there been anything that has worked for you that you've liked over other ideas?
I mean, it really depends. I know that's the answer to like everything, but I mean, I'm a simple dude. I honestly sometimes just like some good old CSS, and I just put each bit of CSS in the particular component it goes to, if I need to. And if there's global stuff, you apply it on the, like in the main global styles thing. But I would actually be happy to address that more specifically in like a one-on-one chat if you'd like.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Because yeah, there's a lot of ways to do that. SCSS is really cool. That's what we use at work, but we use Angular at work. So it kind of sucks. I miss React a lot. I haven't used it in a while. So yeah, hit me up on Slack. I'd be happy to talk more about that.
Can do.
Cool. All right. Anyone else have any questions?
I guess not to use it as like an excuse to maybe not focus on something, but is there anything that you can kind of pinpoint that was something that either caused you a lot of stress during your boot camp or that you were like really hyper focused on and then realized that that wasn't worth the stress you were putting on yourself for it or anything like that?
Oh yeah, like are there some things that I like maybe expended too much energy in and found that it wasn't actually that important? Yeah, so I'm really OCD about things, and I focused way too much on the proper file structure and folder structure of something. I wanted to come up with the holy grail of folder structures, something that was impenetrable and so organized that it would make me write perfect code the first time every time. It's impossible. Don't do that. Just start out with, you use your common sense to be like, all right, I'm going to organize this way. I'm going to organize this way, but don't try to come up with the all omniscient folder structure for a project. Because it doesn't matter what you do. It's just like chess. No matter what opening you use, there's always a counter to it. And you're always going to find something that just doesn't quite fit with the structure you've got in place. So don't get married to a particular file structure. That is probably the big one. I wasted a lot of time. Just like, I would try to like, some days I would try to write like all the files and folders beforehand. I'd be like, all right, yeah, it's all here. Now all I have to do is just write the code. And then it's like, oh wait, shit, this isn't gonna go here. And then it just becomes, and then I would end up just trashing the entire project and be like, all right, let's just start with, I know that I need this and I know that I need that. So let's just start there. And then let it kind of grow organically from there. That would be my advice.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's literally something I've been kind of running into myself, where I kind of like to have like this big picture of how it's all going to go together before I start anything. And
it's not to say that you shouldn't have a big picture. In fact, architecting is a whole other thing. I could probably do a whole series on just like architecting things. But again, like, you have to be flexible and willing to change your design. It's good to have one. You should have one. You should have like a general idea for like, okay, I know that I need to use this library. I know that I'm going to need to do this and this. I know that I'm going to need these utilities, etc. But just don't spend too much time on, where they're going to live. Create the folder, put them in there. If you got to change it later, then just change it. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Another thing is, and this is a big one. So it doesn't matter what your folder structure is to a point. But there's some principles that you do definitely want to follow. I'm a big proponent of modularity, just meaning that your code, when you have a file, whatever file that may be, it has a very specific purpose. Whether that is exporting a component, or maybe it's just exporting a set of like utility functions, or maybe it's just a template. I don't know. A file should just have a very specific purpose, whatever it may be, wherever it may live. And that not only helps with organization, because then if something is modular, then you can move it around, and then the only thing that you have to really change is where it's being imported and exported from. So there is, I think, a lot of benefit to that, and not getting too, and not trying to make big giant files that do everything. You want things to be as modular as possible, so that not only is it easier to understand and organize and add to later, but it's testable. I have come up with so many situations at work where there's code that was written like 4 years ago, and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, how the hell am I going to test that? Because it wasn't written in a way that I could easily import it into a test environment. I would have to refactor the whole thing, which sucks. You're always going to have to refactor, though. It doesn't matter. It's just the more you can at least plan on it being used in multiple places, the less headache it'll cause you. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Cool. We still got 10 more minutes, so use this time. What else do you guys got? Can be about anything: CSS, HTML.
Do you guys whiteboard a lot whenever you hire?
So our company, okay, so that's a good question. My experience, so I haven't been part of the hiring process for anything yet, but I've been at this job for about 8 months. So I can at least tell you about what my interview experience was at Fidelity. And I can talk even more about just my interview experience generally. I've probably had 25 interviews in the last 2 years. So I can definitely provide some insight there. And in fact, I will probably do an entire series on just that. So this is great. I'm getting a lot of ideas here. This is awesome. So, all right. Our company, when I interviewed, it was not a whiteboard. I was not handed a marker and told to design a dashboard or anything. Or explain how bubble sorting works. What I was given was a laptop and a series of puzzles. And it was basically just kind of like the format of Leet Code. Like they had actually picked out 5 coding questions, and there was a test runner for each one. So I would write code, and then it would run it, and then it would test all the different, they had a bunch of edge cases and stuff where they test your function. And you would know if your code passed or not instantly. So that's what my experience was. There was also the phone interview, which happened first, where they asked me some just broad questions. They asked me about Redux. They asked me what it was. They asked me what asynchronous programming is. More specifically, they asked me what a promise was in JavaScript. Everyone should know what a promise is, by the way. Everyone. If you're not in a bootcamp yet, don't worry about what a promise is right now. You will find out, but you do need to know that. I cannot emphasize enough how important a promise is. Anyways, sidebar. So I was asked what a promise was. I was asked what a generator was, a generator function. If any of you are not sure what that is, hit me up. I love explaining generators because they're super awesome. I was asked what, there's something else that was really important. what was it? I've had so many phone interviews. Some of the questions escape me. Redux, asynchronous programming, specifically promises and async await, as well as I think they were asking me. I think it was a question about scope. Like, oh yeah, I remember. What's the difference between const, var, and let? I was asked those questions, and then there was several more. I honestly don't remember them. I think what I'll do though is compile a list of I'll sit down and like go through and really remember what I was asked in the last 2 years, and I'll probably make like a little cheat sheet or something for one of these episodes later on. But anyways, so there was that phone interview where I was asked a bunch of questions, and then there was the in-person interview where I was basically just given a set of questions. They left the room, which was nice, because it's kind of awkward just sitting there while someone's just like watching you. It's awkward for them too. I think the interview process could be, they did it right, where they went into a different room. They could actually, I was screen sharing with them, but they weren't like in the room with me. So they're like, you know, if you have any questions or whatever, just hit us up. We're just going to be here, but you know, we're not over your shoulder or whatever. But you got 45 minutes, and that made me feel really comfortable. So I was able to answer most of them fairly well. They told me that no one had ever finished the whole thing, so I didn't feel bad that I didn't finish it. But yeah, that was my experience. But they were hard questions. They were not questions that I would expect someone just going out of a boot camp to finish in 45 minutes. Not that it's not impossible. It's just that my experience of teaching for 2 years, there were questions that I think most bootcamp graduates would struggle doing in 45 minutes. Could they do it in 2 hours? Absolutely, especially with Google, especially with like the availability of Google and stuff. But there are just certain tactics and techniques that you learn as you do this just over time that really came in handy at that moment. So that's why, again, like if I hadn't done all those leak code problems and stuff, this situation would have been a lot more difficult. There are some other questions that I was asked, not in that interview specifically, but other types of interviews I've had I've had whiteboard interviews where they tell me, hey, how would you design a notification system? Like a notification pop-up thing where, you know, you do something on the site and a message pops up. Like, they're like, how would you design that? And I would just explain what it would look like. I explained, you know, the kinds of components that might be involved in that and the kinds of HTTP requests that may or may not be involved in that. Stuff like that. But for those kinds of questions, I would actually, if I were to categorize the most common interview questions I've had, it would be just a long series of random questions about basic concepts, the DOM, HTML tags, HTML elements, CSS questions like selectors, more specifically specificity, like what gets styled, or what would override a style if it was applied, like a class or an ID or a tag, you know, what gets priority, those kinds of questions. Promises, generators, basically a string of questions that you just answer. Another type is the whiteboarding. Another type is having to solve several questions in like a timed scenario. I've had one interview. They paid me $100 to go in and basically work half a day, and they gave me like a feature that they were working on, and they just had me work on it as if I was an employee. That was kind of cool, also terrifying, because I don't know if I would want to do that I don't know if that was the most effective thing, but it was kind of cool because I got to see what they were working on and the kinds of problems they were dealing with. So for them, it was probably, I don't know, it was pretty effective. I've had ones where they bring up my GitHub and they ask me questions about a project and they go, hey, well, what would you do differently here? What would you, what do you think you did well? If you were to do this again, how would you do it? How would you add a new feature? Stuff like that. And they'd ask you about your decisions. Like, why did you do it this way as opposed to this other way? Like what different options did you have? Or what different options did you choose from? And I've had interviews where they give me a take-home test. That's actually how I learned TypeScript. Oh my God, that's going to be a whole other series too, is TypeScript. Everyone should learn TypeScript. I haven't written vanilla JavaScript in 2 years. So I had a take-home test where they had me, it's just like you solve a problem, but it's like hard. It's not just like something you do in 4 to 5 minutes. It's like they have you build like a little mini project. You take it home, you do the thing, you write it, you send it in, and then they had me come in and talk to them about what I had built. And then they sat with me and had me add features to it and like talk through it. So I know that's a lot of stuff, but is that helpful to you? As far as the kinds of interviews you might expect?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I think one of the most underrated skill in programming is the ability to explain something. So if any of you have the chance to become a mentor for someone else who is maybe a student in a boot camp, or maybe it's just like a friend that you have that would like to learn, or if there's someone in your life that needs coding lessons, I would highly recommend taking up that opportunity. I would not be where I am today if I hadn't taught at a school for 2 years. I was lucky in that every day I was kind of forced to explain things as simply as possible. I'm a firm believer that the simpler your explanation is, the better you know it. So yeah, try to explain things to people. Here's a test. Go home and explain to your girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or husband or whatever. Go home and explain the HTTP protocol. And if you can do it in a way that's interesting, you'll be all right. Not saying that I could do that, really. I think my girlfriend would just be like, I don't care. But it's a good test.
That's been my experience as well.
Yeah, so learning how to explain stuff. I honestly wish I had done more of that. Like, I wish I had like a study buddy or something, or like someone to tag team problems with before I went to a boot camp, where I could be like, all right, let's try to do this thing together. Because it's amazing how just having that feedback loop between two people, when you approach a problem, it has a compounding effect, for sure. Like at work, I tag team with people all the time because the problems that we're solving are like really complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. So being able to like really hone in on things in a simple way is really useful. Yeah, anyways, well, so we're a little over time, but whatever. Thank you guys so much for spending time. I wasn't really sure how many people were going to show up to this, so I'm really excited that we had almost 10 people. This is fantastic. Does anybody have any last questions or anything?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, I'm not sure if you would know this, but do you know if companies really care what kind of computer system you're using? Like, for example, I'm using Windows 10 and I had to download the Linux subsystem in order to use a terminal, or
No,
do they just care?
They don't give a crap. They just care if you can code and if you can learn and adapt. I was issued a Mac, but I was actually given a choice. They asked me, what computer do you want? I was like, oh, a MacBook Pro, please? They're like, all right. So now that sometimes, like, actually at my old job, I didn't have a choice. They sat me down at a Windows desktop and said, here's your computer. I was like, all right, thanks. So they knew that I had only coded on Macs, so they just were like, all right, that's cool. Well, you're just gonna learn how to code on Windows now. So I was like, all right, if you're willing to do that, then that's all they care about. We have another chat. Cool. All right. Well, that is it for today. Thanks to B-School for sponsoring this. Let's see here. The next series is next week. It is on, don't actually remember what it's on the top of my head. There's 4, but I don't remember what the order they're in. Where did I put it? Sorry, one sec. It is. Where is it? I can't. All right, I'm having issues accessing this thing. One sec. Here we go. All right, next week is web development fundamentals. So I'm gonna kind of go into some more detail on just like the specifics of web development, like tools and things such as Postman. I'm going to show, I'll go into a little bit of Devtools, but that's saved for Code Talk 3. But Code Talk 2 next week will be on just web development fundamentals, just things to know for being like an effective web developer. That means, using the built-in debugger and Node, stuff like that. So yeah, feel free to join in next week. I'm excited. And yeah, thanks everybody. Hopefully I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yep, see ya.